When we're talking to our members, we try to remove ego out of the equation. And I preach that to our superintendents a lot. You got to take your own personal ego out of that equation and really listen to what someone's saying to you. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not. But if you pull the ego out of that, you can make that evaluation safely. I think by doing that, you can analyze what the concern is. They're the ones that are driving the success of any club. If your members aren't happy, your club's not going to be successful.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You'll feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
Well, I'm super excited today to be talking to a friend who we've had an interesting relationship in a couple different capacities. One as an individual who interviewed with Danny for a superintendent position, probably back in 2019-ish, 2018-ish timeframe, and then continued that relationship to the point of actually working with Danny in a recruiting capacity about a year ago. So, Danny, I appreciate the friendship and your trust, and it's been a really fun, I don't know, it's an interesting narrative to tell people, and somebody says, hey, do you know Danny Gwyn? And I'm like, I actually do in a very different way. And they're always kind of blown when I tell them that story.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I probably should have hired you, Tyler, but if I didn't, you wouldn't have everything you've got going on. So
you saved me. You're the reason why we're doing what we're doing today. So thank you.
Well, I'll take credit for that.
Yeah. So obviously you've built an incredible career kind of at all different levels of facilities. So for those people that don't really know a little bit about you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. So being in golf course maintenance is really the only job I've ever had in my life. I started when I was 14. My job was very technical at the time. I was hired by a local city-owned golf course, and my job was to pull goosegrass out of the greens. Did that for an entire summer. For some reason, that stuck with me, and I decided this was a career I wanted to investigate. So yeah, I did continue working and learning as much as I could while I was before college. Went to college, got my degree, and at the ripe old age of 23, I got my first superintendent's job, which was probably way too soon. I learned a lot, some of what not to do, which is just as critical. But I learned a lot and grew from there. I had the opportunity in my career to, at the time, golf course construction was booming. That was in the mid to late 80s. I think they were building golf courses on every corner, it seemed like. So I had the pleasure to build 5 properties early in my career, all in North Carolina. I was working for a smaller owner-operator at the time, and that led to me taking on regional superintendent responsibilities for that owner. So by 35 or so, I had started working with multiple courses throughout Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. And that kind of led to better opportunities or bigger opportunities with another owner-operator that I worked for quite a while, and had a lot of responsibilities for pretty much the whole East Coast with that group. And that led to me coming to Concert in the role that I've been in for almost a little over 8 years now. So I've been very blessed. I started in public golf. That was my first golf course superintendent's job. And that led to semi-private opportunities and then private opportunities. So I've kind of seen it all. One of the oldest guys I know in the business, been around for a while. So I've seen a lot and been able to experience a lot. So it's been a really good career. And I'm very blessed to be with Concert right now. We're doing a lot of really good things and we're having a good time doing it.
So I asked this question in my interviews with candidates. So I'm actually going to ask you this because I was just thinking as you were going through, what's a normal day What's a normal day like for you? Like, walk us through what's a typical day for you?
Depends. I would say it starts incredibly early. I'm still an old golf course superintendent at heart, so I wake up early. And, I was an active superintendent for 35 years. So those old habits die hard. Thankfully, I haven't had to grow grass for quite a while. And I say thankfully because I don't know that I would be very good at it anymore. I'm relying on others to help me in that aspect. But my job is more focused on global operations for the company and golf course maintenance. So it's a busy day. You never know what's coming. There is some travel. The travel is sometimes good, sometimes it's not. I guess my superintendents have a joke that if you start seeing Danny hang around for quite a bit, you may want to start looking at yourself and looking at your club. But there's a lot of our superintendents that don't see me very often, and that's a compliment. So it's kind of it's good. I get to focus on a lot of the things we may need to improve or capital projects, and that's encouraging, and I enjoy that part of it.
I was going to ask, as it relates to what you're seeing, from trends in the industry, especially from that kind of role that you're in, what do you see clubs investing into now as it relates to the golf course side of things? What are some of those consistent trends property to property that you may see?
So I think we're at a interesting point. I think some of the trends for what we're investing in, a lot of it is labor. The clubs have realized that we have to step up in staffing. What we used to be able to pay is irrelevant now. We have to realize what the market is asking, and we have to step up and make those changes. If we don't, we're going to fail. Concert has done a really good job of doing that. I think one of the other things that we're starting to see is a lot of clubs maybe are not investing back in their properties like they should, which is, again, something that Concert's really good at and is really kind of the key to our company, is investing back in our properties so that we can continue to grow.
And it's funny you talk about labor, because I see that pretty much everywhere. It's like resetting that button, and it seems like an annual thing anymore. It's not a one and done. It's almost annual, right? Yeah. And when you go to properties that maybe you've just acquired, what are some of the big discoveries that you find, like in that initial, I'm assuming labor is one of those, where a lot of things change, but any other things that you would say, hey, here's kind of the top 2-3 things that we see in every property we acquire that we first address?
So yeah, we do things, maybe a little bit differently than what you described when we're looking at clubs, and we look at a lot, but we're very particular about what we buy. It has to be in the right demographics. It's got to be a good fit for Concert. So, there's a lot of opportunities that we may take a pass on just because they don't fit what we do. I think we get in as early as we can, and we are very serious and careful with our due diligence prior to the acquisition. So in most cases, when we go in and we have acquired the club, we know what we have. So one of the things we do see is labor. In a lot of cases, we see some deferred maintenance, CapEx opportunities that we want to take advantage of. In a lot of cases, we also see some conditioning issues, not always, but sometimes. And those usually stem from a lack of funding. So we're able to get a plan together to come in and try to correct some of those agronomic issues. So we're proactive in getting ahead of that. When we actually acquire the club, we have a plan in place and we're ready to go.
And is there anything that you see? I hear this a lot from committees. We need to get some quick wins, right? What are some low hanging fruit things that we can address? What do you think moves the needle for most clubs that you've seen?
So I think a lot of times I think clubs maybe are not looking at their own club realistically. They look at it through jaded lenses, and I can appreciate that because they take pride in their clubs and they think maybe it's on a higher level than it actually is. So I think one of the things we try to do is look at it through our lens, understanding the market, understanding the club, and what level of club it may be. But and sometimes I think the ego of trying to compete with clubs that maybe they really don't have any business competing with drives them to do things that are not sound business practices. So we do tend to see that quite a bit.
I'm laughing. I'm smiling as you're saying that because I'm thinking about almost every search engagement that we're in. It starts with who you are. What do you want to be? and then where do we land in the market, and
Right.
trying to educate that it's a hard thing. Well, it was harder, 3 years ago for me to be able to tell people that. It's a lot easier when you got data to back up.
Exactly.
Right. And I think it's always a challenge to it's not offending somebody. It's not trying to tell them that your property is not special. That has nothing to do with it.
Not at all.
This is a business, and we want to help you, and we want you to focus on the key things that are going to make you great.
Sure.
And not overinflate who you are, because if we're going to go that route, then that's going to hit your pocketbooks if you want to be comparative to that.
And in a lot of cases, when that happens, it simply doesn't produce the end result that they were hoping to produce. You end up with a false narrative.
I really appreciate that. I feel like I might have to I'm going to book this in my presentations before we start. You watch this podcast. Because it's so true.
It is.
I think clubs a lot of times overcomplicate that, and it should be much more simple. And from your perspective, what are some simple things people could be doing, from the golf course maintenance side, to really enhance the member experience, and things that people are going to resonate with, the members are going to resonate to say, yeah, this is what we should be focusing on?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think in a lot of cases, what we tend to see, and one thing we try to focus on in concert, is when we're talking to our members, we try to remove ego out of the equation. And I preach that to our superintendents a lot. I want them to be incredibly proud of what they do. But when they're listening to a complaint or a concern, you got to take your own personal ego out of that equation and really listen to what someone's saying to you. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not. But if you pull the ego out of that, you can make that evaluation safely. I think by doing that, you can analyze what the concern is, and you, with whatever leadership group you have at the club, can make a decision on what the next action plan is to be. But there needs to be an action plan. And whatever that ends up being, at the end of the day, you have to appreciate the members, right? You have to listen to what they're saying, evaluate their complaint, and appreciate the fact they're willing to give it to you. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are driving the success of any club, whether it's in concert or outside of concert. If your members aren't happy, your club's not going to be successful. And contrary to what a lot of people may want to think, running a club is a business. I don't care who you work for or what level of club you have, is still a business, and it needs to be run that way.
I often hear conversations around metrics, right? Performance metrics. On the golf superintendent side, it's now green speeds, it's firmness, it's labor tracking, a number of those things. From your perspective, what metrics actually matter when you're evaluating, or concerts evaluating, the club performance?
So we do surveys, and we try not to burden our members with a survey every time they play around. So it's, I think, quarterly that we do them. And we put a lot of credence into what those messages come back to us and tell us. So we do that. We also we listen to our members from the club perspective, as we were just discussing. So those concerns that may arise from a club perspective go to the leadership of concert. And concert's a very lean, mean leadership team, so we can act quickly if there are valid concerns. And maybe it's something that comes up that's not on a survey, but it is a real concern for the members. We can take action, as we were just talking about. So I think paying attention to what your members are saying, a lot of it is participation at the club, because we do track those things as well. If we start noticing participation drop off, something's going on, and we got to take a look at that and figure out what it is. And again, we got to take that action.
So interesting to hear about the activity at a membership club. And a lot of times we'll talk with superintendents about how are they an ambassador for their club, right? And how are they helping promote their club and the department? Because I think members, what we have seen, at least from my perspective, is that members are really interested in what the golf course maintenance team is doing. And they're very engaged. So curious your thoughts of what are ways superintendents can be better ambassadors, not only for their department, but also the club.
They got to be visible. They need to attend certain member events. I don't mind them attending most member events, but they got to be professional in that as well. understanding that they're probably going to have conversations. And again, it goes back to taking that ego out of the conversations. They have to be real and be open. I think also member communication proactively, whether it's an email or what have you, getting out ahead of issues is critical. And we really focus on that in concert. Our guys will send out a monthly update to the entire membership, and we try not to look at it past tense. We try to look at it going forward. If there's something we need to address, we will, but we really want to focus on what are the plans going forward. And I think that goes a long way. We see a lot of times, this is a really simple example I learned early in my career. If let's say you're coming out of winter in transition zone and you have a little bit of winter kill, members just want to know you see that, right? So if it's a dead area or a dead tea or whatever the case may be, as long as it's not catastrophic, identifying the fact that you see it and you understand it and you know you have a problem and you're going to fix it goes a long way. I got taught by one of my mentors early on, if you're in that situation, take a simple paint gun out, mark it off, and right in the middle of it, sod. And he said, you've just communicated to your entire membership that you see that and you're going to fix it without having to send an email or get on the phone. And I always thought that was a valuable lesson. It just proves I see it, we understand it, we're going to fix it.
I'm smiling because I remember somebody telling me that as well. They're saying, you just go out and ground under repair and you just put something out.
Yeah.
People see
anything.
That, something.
It's important. They just want to know you see it.
Yeah. You had these little potholes. I'll never forget this. Every winter, you'd come back to have, everybody has these, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people have these where water collects. It just kind of sits.
Bird bass.
And then every spring, kind of like, these bird bass everywhere. And you're back to people like, oh, why can't we fix it? And sometimes just put mark and ground up air and people are like, oh man, it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Right.
So like you said,
it goes a long way.
What was your, I'm curious from like going backwards a little bit to kind of your early career, coming from more of like a single destination, like you're working at one private club, going now to multiple clubs, right? What was that transition like for you? Because I know a lot of people that we work with that are looking to make that step where they were maybe in a real capacity, things of that. What was that experience like for you?
So it was interesting. At the time I started doing regional superintendent work, I had, as I said earlier, I'd built several clubs, had learned a lot during construction, learned a lot about grow-in, and had pretty much, and had run some day-to-day operations as well. So I pretty much had my agronomic plan ironed out. What worked for me, the procedures, processes that all made sense for me and worked. But one thing I did learn early on was my ag plan is not the only way. There are numerous ways to produce the product. And one thing that is important to me to this day is I want our superintendents to have autonomy to run the operation the way they see, to produce the product the way that works for them, and to be able to stamp their personality on that golf course. As long as we're producing the product, it was a little bit of a learning curve for me to understand that there are numerous ways to do it. And I've accepted that and try to embrace that now, and even coach our regional superintendents to look at it the same way. As long as the product's being done and done effectively, we should be thrilled with it, and we need to give that superintendent the autonomy to do it. I think the other lesson I learned was just really the opportunity to look at the bigger picture, to be able to look at some opportunities with buying power and things of that nature. I came to concert, we were 14 clubs and now we're 41. That buying power can go a long way for a company like ours. But again, it goes back to the same thing I was just discussing. We're not a very corporate heavy company. We try to be very non-bureaucratic. So we have opportunities for superintendents to take advantage of. And in most cases, it's up to them to be part of the solution and join on, and they do. But there's really nothing that's heavy-handed mandated from the top down, except for one little item, and that's chemical spend. We kind of look at it where Chemicals are obviously a commodity, and as long as you're buying branded products, it doesn't really matter who you buy those from. And so we have agreements with a couple of companies that we tend to focus on. So in a nutshell, I was able to investigate those opportunities a little more fully. And as the company continued to grow, we got a lot more attention in those areas. And that was a part of the learning curve as well, but it's turned out to be great. I think, again, it's just one of the cornerstones of Concert is just to hire good people, put them in a good place, give them the resources to do their job, and let them go do it, and try not to get in their way. Again, as long as they're producing the product.
Do you, and this is a question, do you have maintenance standards that you deploy to all properties? Every property is slightly a variation of that. What are your thoughts on that in general?
We don't have a written standard, and that's by design. Again, our company philosophy is really not to try to cookie cutter operations, and that's in GCM or throughout the entire club. We have to be smart enough to look at each club individually, understand the market, and understand what its needs are and what the expectations need to be. So no, we don't necessarily look at it that way. We rely on feedback from the members. We rely on site visits from our regional supers and from others at the club as well, things that they may see. Our communication lines have to be incredibly open on the club level as to what we're seeing condition-wise. And again, if we hear those things, we got to be able to act quickly. So I just don't think we can try to run Club A the same way Club B runs. Never works.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We hear a lot about maintenance standards in a lot of clubs. I think they're looking for maintenance standards to justify maybe certain practices, right? And a lot of times it's for budgeting purposes.
I get that.
But I was curious on how, Concert, you deal with that because your properties are all different. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there is a standard, maintenance type or architecture type that falls under your guys' umbrella. So I think it'd be really hard to establish it that way.
It would be. We have clubs of varying levels. And that's, again, by design, that's the way we want it to be. But you just got to be realistic and understand what each club is.
As we think about kind of the next 2 to 3 years, 5 years, I'm sure you're planning out 10 years. Where do you think clubs are underestimating change, whether it's staffing, technology, member expectations? What sort of things do you think clubs are underestimating at this point?
Sometimes we see clubs we may be looking at to acquire, they are underestimating the labor trends. They may be a little bit under what really needs to happen. That's certainly a concern, and I see that. I don't see that correcting itself. One of the biggest things that we're focused on is recruiting, which fits right into your scope of work. But as you can appreciate, I think the talent pool, not just at the superintendent level, but certainly at the assistant superintendent level, is not quite what it may have been 15 years ago or more. So that's a struggle. I think one of the hardest positions we have to fill in within Concert is the assistant superintendent position. So we're focused on that. And I think a lot of clubs maybe take that position for granted. As long as they have a good leader, they don't focus enough on that club. I would say the other trend we tend to see, as I mentioned earlier, is reinvesting in the property the right way, not trying to keep up with the Joneses or whoever you perceive your competition to be, but understanding your property and trying to make a smart decision. Again, it's a business. I don't care what club you're at, but if you don't see a valid return on that investment, you may get yourself in a financial hole, which is never a good place for a member-owned club or a single-owner club to be in. But it might be good for Concert because it may open the door for us.
Absolutely. And then Danny comes in and the team comes in and they're heroes.
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Yes. My last question for you, and this is probably more, we might dive into a couple follow-ups to this, is in terms of investing into staff development. I know Concert's done a really good job of engaging, whether it's crew members, whether it's assistants, whether it's superintendents. Talk a little bit about what you guys are doing on, just engaging your people into the professional development side.
So yeah, we are, as we were discussing, and as you know, we are heavily focused in that. One of the things we've started this year is an incentive for our golf course superintendents. And the fact we always want to grow from within, but so we're going to incentivize our superintendents. If they have an assistant, that they grow to a point that we promote them to a superintendent's position within concert, then that superintendent gets incentivized for that. So we're trying to create ownership again at the club level and really grow our own assistants to be ready for the next step. I think that's critical. We're always going to hire the best candidate, but having that opportunity to be able to get someone that understands concert and what we're all about just makes a lot of sense for everyone. And we want that for our employees to be able to grow, because that's what they're in those positions for. I think as far as some of the other mainline staffing, we're just really focused on retention, because going out and hiring new employees is incredibly difficult. So if we focus on really taking care of those that we have, and that's a continual process, it's not a one-time fix. It's got to be a daily consideration of taking care of that valued staff and making sure they're content at the club that they're working at. So I guess in a nutshell, those are the two things we really focus on. But it's got to be a daily task for our leaders and our leaders at the club to be focused on.
Yeah, I love that. In our recent employment studies that we've done, whether it's a superintendent, assistant, even most recently our equipment manager survey, my good friend Jones and I, the top thing that employers beyond the compensation, which you could find that in every single industry, not the turf industry, golf industry is not in a silo in that area, but professional development training,
Right.
and being at employers that are building that culture of professional development training is imperative to the success. And it's interesting. I was talking with a dear friend about a week ago about in corporate world, how much money is put into training, and this industry is so far behind that, but we're trying to do something. I think it's educating boards and the committees. This has got to be a part of this business. This isn't just show up 9 to 5 and, willy-nilly it around. It's got to be, you got to develop a professional culture that people see this as a career.
I agree. One of the other things we are doing in that light, if we have someone that's on one of our crews that decides they want to go into agronomy or golf course maintenance and they want to get an education, we help support their tuition efforts in those cases. As long as they continue to work for the company, we will assist them with their tuition. And again, the hopes are that they're going to go and get their education and come back to work for concert.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that education piece is critical now because there's just not as many people coming out of the programs, so clubs are going to have to invest back in to the existing staff, people that just show an interest.
I agree. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Maybe some single club operations maybe don't take that position as seriously as they should, because that's the future of our business, clearly.
Well, what haven't I asked you that you think is important for people to know about you, about concert, anything that we didn't discuss? I appreciate you spending some time here with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed it. I think concert is, to me, I've worked for a lot of different owner operators. We prefer that term. Sometimes we get keyholed into the management company category. And while that's fine, there's a lot of great management companies out there that do really good things. It's kind of not what we do. A management company, in our opinion, does just that. They may come in and give you some good programming and practices and advice, but they may not have any skin in the game. For concert, it's the exact opposite. We own every property fully. We don't just own shares, we own them outright. So we have tons of skin in the game, obviously. And our approach to running the business is that of an owner-operator. And I feel like that's a differentiating factor from maybe some other companies that are in the same business we are. I think it's clear from our founders, Peter Nanula and Susan Donovan, it was clear from the beginning that needed to be our approach. That every club is different and we can't run it as a cookie cutter. and we have to be realistic about where the club is, and we have to be very non-bureaucratic in the way we run this company, even as big as we are now, and we're going to continue to grow. That's got to be the focus of our company going forward. I just think sometimes when we're interviewing candidates, maybe we get looked at in a light that really isn't fair. We get looked at as an entity that maybe dictates from the top down to what actually goes on at a club, when we're the exact opposite. It goes from the bottom up. And I just wish more people really understood that there are tons of opportunity for you to run your own business within our organization. And yeah, I just think that's critical. One of the challenges I hear a ton when we do interviews, you might even have heard it in an interview that we did together, but yeah, it's just not the way we're set up, and we have no intentions of doing it that way. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to say that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you went that direction, because I know in that engagement, we talked about you're going to have to educate people on what concert is, because right or wrong, put into a labeled in bucket that I'm aware of isn't the case. But, a lot of times the industry just doesn't know, and candidates don't know whether you're at the assistant level, equipment manager level, superintendent level, or across other departments. They don't know what they don't know. So you have to be proactive in educating people about that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time here with me this morning. Always good to connect. Good to see you, and giving good perspectives.
Good to see you as well.
Well, we will. And anybody that wants to reach out to you, Danny, where can they find you?
So the easiest link is on the Concert Golf Club website. If you go under leadership, you can see a little bit about me and the rest of the leadership team, and it's got my contact information there, and you feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.